Hi, everyone. I'm here with Kat Divers. She's the CEO of the National Support Network, and you're in the sort of like customer support directory, trying to help people get the right level of support they need if they get into difficulty or they need support, as an example. Kat, thanks very much for joining me. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I suppose to start off, I wanted to chat just a little bit around some of the support, I suppose, you see within the industry as being needs within the industry. I know you've built up this service of like directory of support kind of organizations who can help customers, but do you see any kind of like specific trends, or have you seen that change over time since you've really been doing it?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do at National Support Network is to curate and host the UK's largest vetted support services directory. So because this contains information on thousands of different helplines and support groups and self-help apps, that support landscape is always changing. So we've got a trained team that monitor that, and we've got tech checks, and we get user feedback. And so we actually see that support landscape change over time and make sure that we're keeping that directory up to date. For example, over the past few weeks, we had Gingerbread, the charity that provides support for single parents. They closed their helpline down, but they
Mm.
still continue to offer support online and in real life. We've seen a new service for veterans who are, or those that have served in armed forces who have experienced domestic abuse. So we see all of those changes across the national support landscape.
And how dynamic is that landscape? As someone who's not fully immersed within that, from my point of view, it seems like there's a couple of big players, and then there's a whole sort of like vast swathe of additional, like more like specialized kind of support. But how much does that change? Is a lot of change that's going on with the new ones bubbling up and then disappearing? What do you see?
It changes a lot because very often we signpost to charities and we signpost to other organisations that meet our criteria and how they help and support people through any life problem. And what we see is that landscape changes a lot. And sometimes it's driven by funding decisions because a lot of charities are dependent on grants from different trusts and foundations to fund their work. And so as that changes over time, it may be an area of focus, it may be a project's coming to the end. It often means that they have to create new services or cut existing services because the projects come to the end. But we also see that another reason why these services change is because of demand,
Mm.
because there's a really high demand for support services at the moment. And a lot of times people go to the big name charities, but actually, you know what, one of the things that I believe in what we're trying to do is to help almost spread the load and get the people to the right support at the earliest opportunity before things snowball, before there's this demand grows and then the charities become overwhelmed. So those are just a couple of the reasons why we see those changes. I think as well, like another thing to mention is just with technology, it's meant that there are a lot more solutions that are created, whether it's on mobile apps or other things. And so that's quite exciting to see as well. So it's not all pessimistic, it's optimistic as well.
And do you see certain themes in terms of where new support is coming online, particularly driven by demand? Has that changed? We've been through this cost of living kind of evolution that's happened over the last couple of years. That's helped us I would say it's caused issues. I mean, people who look for help in many ways. We've had COVID that sort of generated issues. People have been stuck at home. They've had various like issues that have come out of the back of that. How have you seen that evolve, and what's sort of bubbling at the moment?
Yeah, so the types of support in terms of the problems that are faced, it tends to be around financial and health concerns. Generally, we have clients from housing, education, utilities, financial. So sometimes we see differences in what each client, what their communities, customers, students, or employees are looking for support for. But the general trends are around that financial support piece and around health. And another trend that I've seen is that it is one of corporates partnering with charities or creating their own services to support customers. I think that's quite exciting. So one example of that are the safe havens, where a lot of supermarkets and pharmacies and banks have partnered with HESTA to provide a safe space for anyone who's experiencing abuse to come into their place and go to a private room and just have time to do what they feel comfortable, whether that's consider seeking support or speaking to someone. It's great to see those things happen.
It does feel like there's a huge increase in awareness around vulnerability. I'm going to use the term vulnerability, but these support needs. There's this, well, we were at a vulnerability kind of event the last couple of days, and we're talking about this 50% of the population is potentially have indications of vulnerability out there. And it feels like we've gone from this is something that is perception, at least, is quite rare to actually being a much greater awareness around, well, actually, this affects really most of us in many ways, and all the nuances that sit within that. I imagine that you must see some of that diversity within that as well, because it's different needs for different people and it's very bespoke, I would think.
It depends on how you define vulnerability, but how many of us are going to face a challenge through life? Even if you look at bereavement, how many of us are going to experience bereavement in our lifetimes of at least one person?
Mm.
That's got to be like 100%. There's so much that can happen through life that can go wrong. And that's one of the reasons when I set this up that we decided to cover as much ground as possible. So actually we cover over 1,000 different life problems.
Mm.
We cover health, mental health, relationships, family, work problems, crime, problems with pets even, because there is so much that can impact someone's life. And for us, the most important thing is how can we make it easy for them to find help fast? We want to be that place that people come, they can discover what help is available to them and engage and get that support that they need to resolve or better manage their situation rather than putting off the engagement with support. Because one of the things that we found was 11.8 million people in the UK, they struggle to find help. And of that, half of those people are going to delay or put it off because it's difficult to find. And that's the whole reason I set this up, is because I've been there. I know what it looks like when you go to Google or you're trying to ask friends and family, but they don't get it or they don't know. And then you look online and then before you know it, you've spent 5 hours, you're on some out-of-date American forum reading about how some person in a completely different situation had dealt with something that's completely unhelpful and irrelevant. And then you just think there's got to be something better. And we are so fortunate in the UK to have all of these incredible support services right there, but it's just very hard to find them.
And you mentioned earlier around channels, and channels are getting ease of access to be able to find this information. Digital is a big part of it. You guys are very much involved in digital. Do you see trends around that in terms of like how's that changed the landscape versus phoning up to get access? I suppose you've got to try and find the information. Then do you have to phone up, or do you need to walk in, or can you do it over text? Can you do it through portals or those kind of things? Any kind of trends around that? It feels like we're getting into much more sort of digital space, which recognizes that we've got more people who might are looking for support, but it also gives us the access to be able to access some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think particularly through COVID, a lot of in life meetings turned to let's do it online, the likes of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so we've seen a lot of those types of peer support communities go online. And we've seen a lot more people look online for help, for support that's there when they need it. Because another layer to that is when someone is looking for help, they want to engage with it as quickly as possible. And if there's a support group or something in their local area, but there's a waiting list or there's a long time that they have to wait until they engage with it, then it makes it quite difficult to engage with for them to kind of keep that momentum and then go to that support. So that's why being able to lay out the variety means that people can choose what's right for them. Because online also isn't right for a lot of people. I believe that it's really important that you still have those in person, over the phone, direct lines of communication to speak to someone about a problem. But I'm also very aware of the landscape and that we're operating in, and that like I mentioned before, a lot of helplines are closing because it's costly and budgets are tight, and there's all of these other macroeconomic factors going on that are changing the support landscape. And so, yeah, we see a lot more shifting online. And I believe that everyone should be able to have access to support however that looks, which is why we want to start in time to be able to uncover and unpick some of this a little bit more to identify where it's really valuable and where the kind of in-person and one-to-one support really needs to be funded.
I mean, that balance between over the telephone versus online or even in person, I'll put that as well. There's some people definitely prefer it online, and there's a
Yeah,
whole question around anonymity, if I can say it, around so like you can do it in an anonymous kind of way, and so
yeah,
you can get some of the information versus going up to speak to someone and they can see it's you because you're actually there. But on the other hand, then people like the empathy you can get when you're actually on talking with someone, another human being, versus something that's a bit more remote. How do we get that balance right, do you think? I'm not sure there's a right answer, but there's a balance there. And how do we get the balance?
I don't know if what a balance would look like. I think that, again, it's just important that people can access support in the ways that are right for them. And there are so many organizations delivering support in lots of different ways, and also to lots of very niche support, niche communities as well.
Mm,
As an example, there's a new service that's specifically for those that have served in the armed forces and if they've experienced abuse. Now, you would never know that exists. You wouldn't search for that on Google. So we want those services to be found. But that's a helpline. Would it be important that there's something equivalent in person, locally? That would be the ideal.
mm.
But then would that be more of a general service and not serving just the armed forces? Probably. So then is it as helpful as as the helpline service that's targeted to that particular community? Perhaps not. So then I think that there's a future though where we can get really personalized support in whichever format that we want. But
Mm.
that's the future that we want to build towards, that we want to see.
I'm thinking about mental health as an example, right? If we go back like 20 years, there was a real sort of stigma around it. And it feels like that's been eroding. The stigma's been eroding the last few years where people are much more happy to talk about it. And so that's like nervousness around saying you need help is probably way less now than it ever used to be, say, even 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. How do we take people on that journey to reduce the hesitancy for reaching out for support, but then also maximizing the support that when they get to someone that they actually get as well, rather than having just something that's very kind of generic? I suppose that's the kind of the journey we've been on, certainly with mental health. How do we do that with other kind of sources? Are there areas which you think are definitely areas to focus on?
I think you're right. Mental health is less stigmatized and people are more likely to engage with help. Although I think there is a generational divide in saying that. I think
Mm,
younger generations are much more open to speaking about the problems and seeking support. A big influencing factor are your peers, your family and friends
mm,
as well. And we're there at National Support Network with our support hub directory. We're there at the point where someone wants to find help
mm,
and we help them find it. But there's a whole lot of experiences that happen before that. There's the manifestation of the issue. There's questions even around, could that have been prevented?
mm,
We know that a third of mental health issues are caused by relationship problems, for example, or they're
mm,
perceived to be caused by relationship problems. So if they had help for that, then that could have prevented potentially that mental health issue from happening. And
mm,
all of these issues are intertwined. So anyway, there's the manifestation of the problem happening. Then there's the realization. So actually acknowledging that this is a problem. And then I think depending on the issue, the person, their environment, the time and effort it can take to get to the next step in trying to access help, maybe one that they don't ever get to themselves. Maybe they do need an intervention and someone to help them get that help. And so we work with some organizations that use our service in a couple of ways. Like one way is they share the link and the customer can self-serve and find help for themselves. Other organizations have specialist teams that act a little bit like social workers. They have a little bit more time and freedom. They're not looking at the average handling time. They have time to care for customers. And what they'll do is they will go through the directory with the customer to help
Mm.
identify specific services because and potentially even transfer them directly through to a support service because the customer might not otherwise have the confidence or ability to do that or the encouragement to do that. So then, and then they engage with the support service. So I think that there's this, it can seem really quite straightforward to people who maybe haven't been in that situation before. But if anyone has ever faced a life challenge and went through a struggle to find support for themselves or for a loved one, then maybe they'll understand that that journey can be so different and what we need can be so different. And there's just so many important factors and touch points in there to be explored. And we're just like one small part.
Yeah.
But I think that it is still a very important part in raising awareness of the support that exists.
Yeah, if you have a challenge, then it can be quite daunting in terms of where do you start. And I suppose there's also a question around, do you even realize that, I suppose, you don't necessarily categorize your own issue in the way that, say, it might be categorized by the industry or care organizations. And then how do you work out that this is actually where I fit? And when you do it, it's probably a big relief. When you find it, it's probably a big relief. But
Yeah.
it can be quite daunting when you've got this massive list of, even a big list of organizations. Because where do I kind of start and how do I narrow that down?
Yeah.
And I suppose, what's your advice around how to narrow it down so you can try and get to the support as quickly as possible? And you sort of talked about almost like a concierge service there, which is really a sort of like a support concierge service, which is having a good conversation with someone, and then because you know the landscape and then you can help with them. How can you do that digitally, or how do you best kind of approach that so people can remove that dauntingness around just the sheer amount of support that is available, find the right one for them, really?
So that's what our service is all focused around, is
Mm.
making that easy digitally. So you mentioned privacy before. We don't even use cookies. We don't require people to log in. All of our support directories are delivered by leading brands that we work with, like Ovo, like NatWest. And it means that they can share the link with the customer if a customer discloses they haven't, that they're facing a particular problem, or through regular communication outreach. So the customer lands on this page. There's no cookie pop-up. There's no login. There's a search bar, and the search bar asks what's going on. What problem are you struggling with? Because if we framed it the other way and said, what support are you looking for? They don't know what exists, right? It's a
Mm.
discovery platform. So actually we frame it as a problem-based search in order to find the support that's right for you. So they type in what problem they're facing. They get taken to a results page. And like you said, maybe there are quite a few resources. Now, we're very particular. We're looking for quality, not quantity. So if you go to, you can imagine all the mental health blogs and resources and content that's out there. We only want to list those that are the most high quality, have authority, relevant to a UK audience, or up to date. So we do all of that vetting to make sure that it's not a random list. It's very high quality resources that we list. And what we also do is we map the data around where the service is available across the UK. Is it England, Wales, Scotland, or Northern Ireland? What type of support is it? Is it a helpline? Is it an app? Is it in real life? We also map, is it specifically designed for particular people? So is it specifically designed for young people or older people or LGBT or men or women or what have you? So having those filters right there means that the customer can self-serve and select what's right for them. So if they know that they want a helpline, click the helpline filter, narrows the results, gets them straight to it, click on the call button. So yeah, that's exactly what we do, is just make that as easy as possible.
Yeah, and there's quite an interesting conversation going on around support needs linked to vulnerability causes, and in terms of there might be a problem that you have and you're happy to disclose, but then there's also problems that might be associated with that problem that you might not want to talk about, or actually where you could almost like other underlying issues that you
Mhm.
could also help with as well. How do we best almost draw the linkages between that and other problems or other areas of support where people might actually need help as well? Do you think that's possible? Or is it at the moment it's really based off declared needs that I actually need to have?
I think one problem at a time. Where people are at tends to be what they need help with in that moment. 100%, there's very often things, other factors, other issues underlying that. So if someone loses their job, it may be because they have a mental health issue, and their mental health issue may be caused by a relationship issue. The
Mm.
relationship issue may be caused by the fact that their children are getting bullied at school, or it can be a whole range of things that cascade that can, it just become so complex. And it's one step at a time is all you can take. If you try and help a customer by signposting them to 10, 20 different organizations for 10 different issues at the one point in time, that's too much. To focus on one, and then they'll start to get to the next step and the next step, then the next step in time when they're ready. You can't force anyone when they're ready. One of the things that we actually do as well is we have a pay it forward scheme. So pay it forward is giving back to community and society. And for every corporate subscription, we donate one of our support hub packages to a charity, because very often charities themselves need to signpost.
Mm.
So one of the big charities that we work with, the King's Trust, formerly known as the Prince's Trust, the charities changed their names as well. The King's Trust, they work a lot with young people who are looking to improve their career, start a new business. But during these conversations, a lot of other things come to light. And so they use our support hub to signpost their clients to other areas where they can get help. So we're very aware of the fact that there's a lot going on in someone's life. It's very often not that one thing. And we want to be able to be there when they're ready to engage with it. And just another thing that we do as well is where we can see, we're starting to do more detailed analysis around this, the relation between different topics. We are trying to link them up on our directory. So if you're on a page, I'm trying to think of a good example now. Say you're on a page and you're looking for help with food costs. So we've got the Trussell Trust, we've got independent food banks, we have community fridges, we have baby banks, we have all of this information. Now we know that it's likely that the person might also be looking for support with their bills and their energy costs. So at the end, we have what other people found
Mm.
helpful, or
Mm.
like related topics at the bottom, so they can start to go that journey. If they want to do that, then they're able to do that. And we make it really easy for them to browse the whole catalogue of issues that we have so that they can dip back into it as and when needed. But yeah, I think there's something there about linking these things together. You can never really come up with, can you? Making me think now that I've said, I was about to say you can never come up with a one-stop shop if you go here for this one problem and they solve all of your problems. I think that's quite utopian. Could that work? I don't know. I
I
need to
think
think about that a little bit more.
I think it's interesting though, because people are really on a journey, and we're all on a journey through
Mm.
life, really, to a certain extent. And there's something pops out as like maybe being in need, but there might be three or four underlying issues that you need to explore back and can really actually help with that other need. And it's almost like, how do you take people through that journey of support to a certain extent
Mm.
and help get support for all the various issues, which added up might, as a whole, might actually support them even more. And I suppose it's a bit of a journey, I suppose, really. But I think to your point, it's like you probably have to start in one spot, right? And you can't go to the end of that journey straight away because it's just be overwhelming. And it's like, how do you go at the right speed and then help them all the way along that journey to a certain extent?
And there's something there about they're engaging with support. Like we use this word support. Our company's called National Support Network. Products
Yeah.
called Support Hub. But actually, like, what is support?
Yeah.
It's quite interesting to think about. It's a connection to advice, to
Mm.
people who get it, to funding, to it's really about connection. And I think that that's why I was just thinking, could there be this one-stop shop where you get help for everything? I don't think that you would be able to genuinely train or help someone or coach someone through every life issue, because there are experts out there in all of these different fields who might be able to better relate and better advise people at different points of their journey. And so I'm really passionate about making that connection happen at the right time to the right person or the right content. Yeah, just
Yeah.
a thought that came to my head.
That I was hesitating a little bit earlier using the word help as an example, or support as well, because the words are quite, it's something that we as a company are going to give to the customers in this case, but actually it's
Yeah.
also around customers are, we're all individuals, right? And it's like, how do we help ourselves? And we've got advisors to help ourselves really, really have solutions for some of the things that are important to us to a certain extent. And it's got, the language is quite interesting in terms of like how we look at it corporately versus what we might want personally. And really what we need is it's like having good friends and advice, and really having someone you can trust it to talk to, and they'll listen to you,
Yeah.
and they've got a bit of expertise to give you, to point you in the right direction, as well as maybe some tools to actually help, or those kind of things. The language is an interesting kind of thing. We talk in a certain way, but actually it comes down
Hmm.
to human beings and individuals, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Absolutely. We have a comms toolkit which helps our clients introduce this across different areas of their business, from email signature banners to flyers and
Mm.
posters to sample phrases that people can use in the phone. And I used to work in contact centers, so I know exactly how these conversations go, and I know how it feels to be on the front line with these targets, the whiteboard with the targets, and then you're speaking with a customer and they share that this bad thing happened in their life. And it's really hard to know what to do or what to say. And we want to make that as easy as possible and for it to be genuine. And I think when it becomes too scripted, then it just doesn't sound genuine or encouraging for that person to engage with the support. So our sample phrases are one-liners,
Mhm.
and they're things like, I'm so sorry to hear that you're going through that. I know that there's a site where other customers have been able to find help for problems like this. Would it be okay if I share the link with you?
Mm.
And it's easy to roll off the tip of the tongue, and it's compassionate and consistent and offering a helping hand without maybe risking getting into the a full blown conversation and not knowing where the line is to stop as an
Mm.
advisor. Because I'm a very empathetic individual, so I would want to offer advice, but that's
Mm.
not my job, and I'm going to get into trouble if I do
Yeah.
that. But I want to help. So how can I help? And if I just go, oh, have you heard of Samaritans? It's not very helpful. Like, of course they have, but it's not right for their like
Yeah.
situation in all cases. And Samaritans are a fantastic charity, but they're not right in all cases. And so it's really hard to navigate that as an advisor. And yeah,
The other challenge with advisors is very hard if you're an advisor. Sometimes you can get quite affected by some of the stories as well. I'm like personally quite affected. And
absolutely.
how do we not protect the advisors, but help the advisors with that as well? Because that can be really hard. You can hear some terrible stories that can affect you as well as that, and obviously they're affecting the person you're talking to as well. And
Yeah.
it's hard for it not to affect you personally in terms of taking some of that stuff on board. Obviously, providing the help's part of it, but how do we best think about, I suppose, yeah, helping the advisors with some of that stuff as well, so they can give out the support, they can give out the helplines, or give the advice, the help to people as effectively as possible, and then also then be fresh for the next person they talk to as well.
So many of our clients actually purchase two support hubs. They have one for their customers and one for their employees. What this means is that the employees know that if they are reminded of a situation or something is triggered and they need to find help for themselves for a specific problem, they can go to their employee support hub.
Mm.
And there, because our support hubs are customizable, meaning that our clients can add their information about their own services on it, there the advisor can find information about support services that are either internal or through corporate partners like EAP helplines, and they can see other external options as well. So I think that's very important. But to your point as to how you deal with that as an advisor, that's honestly not our area of expertise, but I have heard that things like training, regular training, breaks, having regular meetings is very helpful for that kind of
Mm.
thing.
And from a corporate point of view, obviously you present a corporate, you named a couple of corporates there who've definitely been receptive. But how have you found the reception from the corporate environment in terms of providing this kind of service for customers and for consumers? How do you find that, and how far do you think we've got to go in terms of providing some of this information for people's customer bases? What do you think the state of evolution is?
I think taking a step back is this that we're seeing a lot of AI used to automate
Mm,
a lot of tasks. And what I'm really interested in is, okay, so if you're automating a lot of these tasks, or when you're seeing a lot of the digital journeys improving, so there's less customers coming through to the contact center, and those that do come through, you see that they're more complex. I'm not going to use the right words here, but they're like, they have more complex circumstances. And so I think that frees up time with the automation to spend time with the customer and support them. And, there was a study by KPMG that found that the number one driver of NPS is empathy.
mm,
I think empathy is this word that a lot of people don't really understand. They're just kind of, okay, showing care. And even if it's just showing care to your customers, how do you do that? And the clients that we work with, they very often have referral partnerships or partnerships with charities in particular topics. But there's a whole variety of problems that come through to them. So how can they help everyone with everything they can? To my point,
mm,
like if they had a channel, if they could offer a helping hand and a channel through to the experts for any issue, I think that can be very important for them, not just as being good for their brand, but the corporate benefits of improving the customer service, supporting the front line, reducing the time spent, keeping their own directories up
mm,
to date, and the kind of ultimate business benefits of being able to be a better business, improve the
mm,
NPS scores, improve the customer experience and customer journey. That's as much as what we're trying to do is something to help people to elevate humanity and all of
mm,
this. I have a corporate background. I get what's the ROI, what's the
mm,
business benefits. And we work with our clients to really build that business case so that they can get this across the line. And in some cases, it may also come down to operational factors like, can we reduce AHT
mm,
because then we don't have advisors scrambling about trying to look on Google for support for their customers? Or can we reduce the risk of them offering personal advice, which could get
mm.
us into a really tricky situation if it causes harm to the customer or bad
Yep.
reputation? So we work with each of our clients to kind of build that out. And so there is absolutely business benefit as well as wider societal benefit in this.
Yeah. Certainly you do see in terms of like state of evolution, as often there's lists floating around and those kind of things, and just whether that reflects the wider sort of environment that you see out there, which is it's been eye-opening, just saying like how much more dynamic it is than you think it is if you're not as close to that kind of sector, which I think is a real like benefit really, because it's complex and it's quite large and it's constantly changing as well. And so just being able to access
Yeah.
that makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really fortunate here in the UK to have so many incredible services out there and resources out there. And I'm just really passionate about helping them be found.
Yeah, fantastic. And so if we look out a little bit in terms of the next 3, 5 years, where do you see services like this or that this kind of sector is really evolving into?
Interesting question. I think we're quite unique in what we do. I think you have support providers like the charities who offer advice directly. And that landscape is going to evolve, continue to evolve. And I'm very hopeful that by being a connector, by tracking the data and what people are looking for and what they're needing and where the gaps are, that we can help to inform those services so that they can target those gaps, identify where support is needed. As a connector and intermediary as well, I think that there's something that we can explore where can we help their work beyond beyond supporting them when it comes to when they're signposting? Is there more that we can do potentially by bringing them together, bridging some gaps between corporates and charities and making introductions? I think that there's something there that's evolving and it's shifting. And I'm quite excited about what that's going to look like to ultimately improve access to services for a lot of people.
It does feel like it's evolving and there's access to data, understanding how everything interrelates. It just feels like we're getting in many worlds, but also in terms of this one, which is just a better understanding around managing some of that complexity, which I think is fantastic, isn't it? Hopefully gets us to better support and better transparency around what's needed and those kind of things. So it's an evolution, but hopefully it's going to be a good one.
I'm optimistic.
So Kat, thanks very much for making the time. I really appreciate it. Super interesting sector, and you can see how it's evolving so quickly as well. That's the other piece. So really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks very much.